Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Unemployables podcast. Today we sat down with the special guest Jordan Syatt. For many years, he has made his living in the fitness industry, culminating with, well, I don't want to say culminating, it's actually still growing, but he was Gary Vaynerchuk's personal trainer, still works with him from time to time to this day. Incredibly well-read guy and has a killer amount of content that he's dropping on the daily. So you're not going to want to miss this episode.
Become unemployable.
Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Unemployables podcast. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Jordan Syatt. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Jordan. I should have asked that before we started. Jordan is joining us from New York, and he's had quite a career so far, but we're grateful to have you on, Jordan.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, what we do is typically talk about, people who shirk the typical 9-to-5 thing. So, would you kind of walk us through your story from time you graduated college, wherever that was, and then just, I don't know if you ever had a 9-to-5, but I know it's not been a typical career, at least in the last few years since I've started following what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I mean, actually, it starts before I graduated college, to be honest with you. Basically, like I really got into fitness when I was in high school. I started wrestling when I was 8 years old, and so when I got into high school, I made varsity as a freshman, and I had to cut a ton of weight. And basically, I was cutting from like 112 to 103 as a freshman, and from like technique wise, I was a good wrestler, and endurance wise, I was a good wrestler. But when you're 14 going up against like 17, 18-year-olds, the strength just isn't there. So I really wanted to figure out how do I get stronger and cut weight. So I applied to a gym near me. Just like, I'll take the trash out, I'll clean the floors, let me just like learn how to lift properly. And I was really fortunate. They took me under their wing, and I worked there all through high school. And basically, like, that's how I got into the fitness industry. And I always knew I wanted to coach. So then when I took a year away from school, and I went to Israel for a year and just traveled and volunteered. And then when I went to school, I started with exercise science, but I quickly realized the degree was worthless. Like, I had just spent 4+ years learning from really amazing coaches, and a lot of the professors teaching exercise science had never coached anybody. They were overweight. Like, they were reading from textbooks that they were telling us about studies that were published 50 years ago, and like they hadn't done anything since. And so I switched my major to behavioral health psychology, because I was like, you could have the best program in the world, but if someone's not following it, then yeah, it's not going to do anything. So I wanted to understand, why are people making the decisions they're making? And so at the same time, I was competing in powerlifting, and I was doing really well. So basically, I just started making videos and writing articles about my training online. I made a website, and I was posting on YouTube, but I didn't have any idea that a business was going to come from it. Like, I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't know that was going to happen. I think it's a really important point, especially when we're talking about just entrepreneurship. Like, I didn't expect to make money from it. I didn't even know PayPal existed. So basically,
They're going to take half of your money anyway.
Yeah. So basically, like, as I was writing articles and making videos, people started to reach out and ask, can you write my program? Can you like do this for me? And I would do it for free while I was in school, until one time this woman from Brazil emailed me. She was like, how much do you charge for online coaching? And I was just like, $300. I just made it up. And she was like, okay, like, how do I get you the money? And I was like, I had to Google it, and I found PayPal, and I made a PayPal account, and she was my first ever paying client. And then, so I literally just started doing that in college. So by the time I graduated, I had a self-sustaining online business. And then from there, I worked in some gyms after I graduated, but within a year after graduating, I was just fully online. And I just had my own online business from that point. So I just was writing articles, doing social media, podcasts, YouTube, all that stuff. And then that's how Gary Vaynerchuk found me. Basically it's really interesting. So basically one of my least popular articles ever written, it was in 2012. It was like how to improve your posture while you're at a desk. This random person commented on it in 2012. And so I replied, because I replied to everybody's comments, no matter like whoever it was. And by happenstance, the person who made that comment 3 years later became Gary Vaynerchuk's first coach. So they followed me ever since then. And then when their contract was up, Gary was like, who's going to be my next coach? And he was like, I have a good idea. And he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to coach Gary. And then I moved from Tel Aviv to New York to coach Gary about 3.5 years ago. And that's been it.
Wow.
I like how he just kind of casually, oh yeah, that's how Gary Vee found me. And then, he just kept on rolling like it was not a big deal. That's an accomplishment, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that a lot. I like that story because it's very, like, in 2012, I didn't know who Gary was. I was literally just writing about it because I liked writing about it. And that story is very in line with Gary's thesis in terms of, like, you never know what piece of content is going to change your life forever, and making sure that you're appreciating your community, and that, like, if someone's reaching out and commenting, you reply back. And it's literally just exactly the stuff that he talks about. And that's how I ended up getting to work with him.
Yeah, I like that, man. I want to take it back just a few minutes ago to where you said that you were in college and you had these professors who were basically giving outdated information.
Yep.
And that's when you decided, well, this is obviously not going to work for me. I'm going to change my majors and focus on what does matter. What actually transpired where you actually were able to see and bridge that gap between the theoretical and the applicable as to what you could do for your clients?
That's a phenomenal question. And I'd say that having done many hundreds of podcasts, and not one person has asked me that. So I love that. Basically, I had spent the better part of 4+ years already coaching people. And in the beginning of my internship, it was mainly just cleaning and taking out the trash, but I made it clear that I really wanted to coach. The first person they ever put me with was a 68-year-old guy named Fred. And his main goal was to be able to pick up his grandkid without hurting his shoulders, because, like, he had 2 torn rotator cuffs. So, like, as a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid whose main goal was to be a good wrestler and look good naked, it was, like, pretty eye-opening to see that there were other goals outside of just, like, performance and aesthetics. And so I really started to look at program design from a holistic point of view and from a very individual point of view. And when I went into school and they were giving us, basically they were looking at everything so meticulously and, like, okay, we got to look at where this tendon attaches to that one, and so how this works and all this stuff. I'm like, listen, this is great. It's all fantastic. But I would much rather learn how to, like, help people on an individual basis, speak with them. What are they struggling with? Because we can know all of this stuff. We can know all of the anatomy and all the physiology, which is important. But if we have the absolute perfect design program, but no one's following it, then what the fuck is the point? I would way rather give someone a 70% program that they follow 100% than give someone a 100% program that they follow 20%. Like, and that's, like, everybody knows what they should be doing. Everybody knows cigarettes are going to kill them, but still some people still fucking smoke cigarettes. Everybody knows that, like, an apple versus a cheeseburger, what's probably the best choice, but not everybody's choosing the apple over the cheeseburger. So
fruit makes you fat. I saw you say that online.
I mean, I'm going to choose the cheeseburger, but
the point is, like, everybody knows, like, they should be exercising, but not everybody's exercising. And so I think we focus too much sometimes on the minutia and the actual, like, the details of stuff, rather than understanding, well, why aren't people making the decisions they need to be making? And so that's why I switched to the behavioral psychology side. Like, I had already learned a lot about program design, already learned the physiology. I knew I was going to study that on my own. I didn't need a professor to, like, talk to me about stuff that I'd already learned and, like, to hammer in details when they hadn't coached anybody in the first place. So I was like, I'm going to spend time learning this on my own anyway. I might as well go like learn something that's from actual experts in the field of behavioral psychology and motivation, so that I can learn how to actually work with people and change their behavior.
Yeah, because it's a lifestyle change, isn't it? You you can't replace a bad habit with nothing. You have to fill that void with something else. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, and people who make exercise a part of their lifestyle, not just a choice they have to make that day or that hour or that week. It's a part of their lifestyle. That's what actually gives them the results.
That's 100% right. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't like to understand or don't like to discuss is that it's fucking hard. Like, it's really hard. And a lot of coaches, basically, they just give out the advice or whatever it is, saying like, if you want to do it, you'll do it, and that's it. And like, if it's important to you, you'll do it, and that's all they say. It's like, if you want to lose fat, eat less, move more. That's it. And it's like, well, yeah, technically you're right. Like, you're not wrong, but that advice is fucking terrible. Like, how about we go in a little bit more depth? Like, let's actually like figure out how can we shape our lessons or shape our coaching to really encourage long-term change. It's one thing to get somebody to do something for a week. What about something for 5 years? That's a very big difference.
I think you made a good point in there too, or kind of touched on it. Where like a lot of people get wrapped up in the details, like the age-old question, like, is it good to eat carbs at night? It's like, well, technically, I guess no, if you're trying to lose weight, but at the same time, like, if you're gonna eat, like, if you're trying to just get your diet in order, it doesn't fucking matter when you eat the carbs. Just eat less if you're trying to lose weight. You know what I mean? Like, it starts with the big picture, and then you start fine-tuning the details. And I know I see in the fitness industry a lot of people getting too wrapped up in the details. Like, it's better to do this first than this, but in the end of the day, it's like, if you have to do this first then that, that's still better than doing neither.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think a lot of people are drawn to the illusion of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that the more complex it is, like, the more effective it must be. And
Exactly.
a lot of people are looking for like, well, what is the perfect program? And it's so funny, like, a lot of this idea of people are using this idea of individualized, like, non-cookie cutter programs as like the best marketing tool. And so I know a lot of coaches who like say they use individual, not cookie cutter programs just as a way of selling, when they really do use individual, like, cookie cutter programs. But the reality is, most people, whether they're using an individualized program or a cookie cutter program, they're not following it either way. And they'd be much better off just doing something rather than nothing. It's like, that's one of the main things I really try and hit home on. It's like, I was speaking with a woman who has obesity. She's like very, very, very overweight. She hasn't done any exercise in as many years as she can remember. And she's like, I just don't know where to start. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, what about walking?
Yeah.
And she was like, I never thought of that. I'm like, go fucking figure. It's like, we're looking for these like complex answers to these very, very simple solutions. I think people get drawn to this idea of doing something complex rather than understanding it's very, very, the fix is very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. And then figuring out how to implement these simple strategies into your life is very, very, it's difficult, but that's how you do it, one at a time.
Yeah. They're looking for a very specific size and caliber silver bullet when all they need is just whatever bullet they can find.
Yeah, exactly. It's why people who have never worked out or have never been consistent with training or nutrition, or they're still smoking cigarettes, like chain smoking, the first thing they do is they go to the supplement store to find a fat burner. I'm like, that is not the right move, bro. Like,
yeah, I think I saw someone recently had put on Twitter, people are wanting microwave problems or wanting microwave solutions for crock pot problems.
I love that.
They're wanting it to be quick and simple, but really the crock pot's over the long period of time is going to make that meat better.
That's so good. I absolutely love that quote. That's fantastic.
I'm going to use that too.
So Jordan, before you started working with Gary, what were kind of the biggest hurdles that you faced in being a fitness professional and being outside of college, but before, a big gig came along like that?
So what my biggest hurdle as like from a business perspective?
Yeah, from a business perspective, and just any uphill battles you faced.
You know, it's interesting. Working with Gary and being with Gary on a literally daily basis, 7 days a week for 3 years straight. It's a lot of people expect to hear like certain tactics that he taught me or business like strategies, and he didn't teach me any of that. Really, the biggest things I took from Gary are much more psychological, emotional, and like really towards what he speaks about all the time is like chasing for happiness and like making that the goal. And one thing I didn't realize at the time I was a very positive and optimistic person coming in to work with Gary, but I didn't realize how angry I was. Like I was pretty an angry person. I didn't realize it until he called me on it. And it was really interesting. Basically, something as simple as if someone left a comment on my Instagram and they were like sort of being a dick, I would get so angry. Like I'd get so mad. I'd get so upset so quickly. And he would laugh. He'd be like, why do you care? It's like, why does that bother you so much? Because they're wrong. Like he's like, so what? He's like, they don't know you. They don't know where you're coming from. They don't know your intent. And basically one of the things that he said was, have you ever in your entire life gone through someone else's social media and left a mean or rude comment like that person has done? And I was like, never, ever. And he was like, imagine how terrible of a place that person must be in their life to take the time to do that. Imagine like how sad of a person, like how sad they have to be in order to like go out of their way to consume your content and then leave a negative comment on there, like going out of their way to try and hurt your feelings. Like you should feel bad for that person. Like you should actually feel very sad and sorry for that person, and you should offer them your help. And I remember like it was a very, very it was a big life-changing moment for me. And ever since then, I'll never forget, someone did that one time, and it's happened multiple times, but the literally the next time this happened, someone left like a mean comment or whatever. I DM'd him and I said, hey man, I saw your comment. I'm not sure if you're going through anything or not, but I just want to let you know, if you ever need anything, I'm always here to talk as a friend. And that person deleted that comment and then came back and DM'd me and said, I'm so sorry. I had a really awful day. I appreciate you reaching out like this. And then they actually became a client. And
that's like an M. Night Shyamalan twist right there.
It's so crazy. It was just one of those moments where, and it works across the board. It's not just on social media, but at any point in time in which it really taught me how to like look at things from someone else's perspective and like imagine where somebody else might be based on the actions that they're taking. And if someone's really angry, or if someone's being mean, or if someone's being like standoffish or whatever it is, I think we all tend to think that we're empathetic, and we all tend to think that we put ourselves in other people's shoes. But at least for me personally, I thought that I was, but I wasn't doing it as well as I could have. And that was one of the most transformative experiences in my life, being able to like really think about how that person probably is feeling in order to do that. And it completely just changed a huge aspect of my business.
Man, so many people would benefit from going to the gym instead of jumping on social media when they're angry.
Yep.
Go and do some really, really hard shit, and then come back and see if you really still want to leave that comment.
Yeah, that's why I have it. That's why I have an 18-pound sledgehammer, and I'll just go dig a few holes in the yard with it.
That's perfect.
Jeff is actually Shia LaBeouf. He just grew up after being in holes.
That's exactly what it is. But now, I think that's a really good point that you just made, Dan. I use that with my kids a lot. You know, I've got 8 boys, and 2 of them are grown, and they're all the way down from teenagers at 17 to 4. And testosterone running as freely in the house as it is. You know, putting them to physical labor really does the trick. So that could be the next marketing turn that Jordan makes. Pissed off? Do this.
Get,
Listen,
like, the
I
pissed
tell
off
myself that
sledgehammer.
all the time. Like, if I'm mad about something or I'm mad at my kid, I have a 2-year-old. If I'm mad at him because he did something that I think is dumb,
Well, he's
like,
2. You're always mad at him.
right? Or like my wife and I had a disagreement. I'm like, this, number one, this isn't that important. Like in the grand scheme of things, this little minute detail that we're arguing over is not that important, and it's not worth being mad over. Or I'll just be like, I'm just going to go run until I feel like stopping, and then I'm more concerned at that point about not being able to breathe and my legs burning than I am about whatever that small problem was.
Or
It's
if you
so
ran
true.
too far, now you can't get back.
Listen, that happened last weekend. I went on like a 7-mile ruck with an extra 20 pounds, and I got like mile 4, and I was like, this was a terrible idea. I don't know why did I do this? I don't remember anything before this moment in my entire life.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back, Jordan. I think you made a good point when you were talking about like what Gary taught you. And before you went into the story about the social media anger, you said that he never really taught you any tactics or specific strategies or anything like that. It was more of a mindset shift that you came away from that with. And you were just talking the same thing about your coaching clients with fitness. And I think that kind of correlation is so telling in that for you or for Gary to be as successful as he is, for you to be as successful as you are, for your clients to be as successful as they are, it all comes back to changing your mindset, changing your lifestyle. The tactics, the strategy, it doesn't fucking matter if you're not going to do it. You just got it. It just becomes who you are and it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. And I think most people are looking for the tactics. It's like most people who want to get a 6-pack, they're looking for the supplement. They're looking for like the pill. They're looking for the exercise, but they're not looking for, okay, well, what do I need to change mentally, emotionally, behaviorally for me? It's the same. I think you're 100% right. In all aspects of life, if you're not looking at how you're handling things from a mental and emotional perspective, then the tactics aren't going to work because you're probably not going to stick to them. Whereas it comes down to like sustainability. And people talk to me about this all the time about social media. Like they want to, well, how do I blow up on social media? All this stuff. I'm like, listen, first and foremost, post every day for 30 days straight. And we'll start there. Like literally just post every day for 30 days straight. And if they can't do that, like that's the first problem. Like if you can't sustain it, then what the fuck do you think? Like it's not going to work. So you have to start off with like finding something that you can sustain. And a lot of times if you can't sustain it, that's going to be more of like how you're approaching it from a mental perspective. It's like one of the reasons people can't sustain a workout program is because their expectations are unrealistic. They expect to achieve a certain result within 2 weeks. They don't get that result, then they quit. People don't post on 30 days for social media because they expect to get 100,000 followers after 2 weeks. It doesn't work, then they quit. It's like you have to have a much more sustainable approach in order to be consistent.
Yeah, definitely. It's about the long game.
When you were in college and like looking forward to what was next after school and getting into the job world, did you ever see yourself as an entrepreneur, or like when did you make that shift of like, oh, I'm like doing my own thing now? You're working for clients in the sense that you're serving these people with your fitness stuff, but when did it dawn on you that like, hey, I'm working for myself, I'm not responding, or I'm not responsible to anyone besides myself? And did the idea of what it was going to look like actually match up with the reality of it?
Yeah, honestly, it's a good question, and I still don't really even consider myself an entrepreneur. The main reason is it's more nitpicky than anything else. It's just like,
sure,
mainly because a lot of the people in the fitness industry call themselves entrepreneurs, and it's like nauseating for me to see them.
Yeah.
They'll take their computer and they'll like set up a whole like photo shoot at the pool or on the beach, and they'll say like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, that's fucking obnoxious. Like, I don't want to associate with that.
And their abs are glistening.
Yeah, it's just like, this is annoying. You can't even use your computer at the pool because of the sun glare. So this is clearly a staged photo shoot.
We all know the Wi-Fi is garbage down there.
So like,
we know that's baby oil, bro.
I think for me, like, I guess like, a lot of people have asked throughout my career, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or what do you want to do? And people have asked me that since I was interning at that gym when I was like 14, 15 years old. And I've literally never known where I wanted to go, including now. If you said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have no fucking idea. I have no clue. I have no idea where I'm going to be, what I want to do. Like, the only thing that I know, and that's been my consistent answer, has been that I just want to help as many people as possible. And I want to make it very clear, like, that is a very selfish answer. I don't say that to sound like hippy dippy or to sound like I'm selfless or so nice. It's not. It's actually very selfish. And the reason is because there have been times in my career when I wasn't focused on that, when I was focused on making more money, or was focused on being an entrepreneur, or whatever it was. And every time my focus shifted to something else, I got more anxiety. I didn't like my job as much. Business actually was hurt because of it, because when I started focusing on that stuff, I started doing the wrong things. But every time I've focused on making sure my goal is to help more people, and that really being my goal, good things have happened. Business has improved. I've enjoyed myself more. I've done more of the right things, because when my goal is to help more people, you do the things that are going to focus on helping more people, and then the good things happen to you as well. So I say that because I don't know where I'm going to be or what I want to do, but every single day I make sure that I know, like, my main goal is to help as many people as possible. Even if it seems like it's going to take a short-term hit, it's the long-term right move, and it's going to make me happier because of it. So that's really the best way I can answer that question.
No, I think that's great.
I can attest to what you're saying. I own a men's grooming supply business, and yeah, I sell beard balms and pomades and all this other for guys who just really want something that's a more manly scent.
Yeah.
I get more satisfaction when I get a message or an email from someone who says, my dad never taught me how to style my hair, or my dad never showed me how to look presentable or trim my beard or whatever. And I'm getting to use your products to have this experience with my son.
Yeah.
Because everybody has that memory of watching their old man shave in the mirror, you know?
Yep.
And those moments that get created from, my product, that's more satisfying to me than getting 50 sales in an hour.
100%.
Tells me, hey, my grooming wasn't on point. I wasn't put together, but I bought some of your stuff. I followed what you said, and I walked into that interview dressed to kill, and I got the job. That's more satisfying than anything else. So you're 100% correct in that. The more you focus on helping, the more valuable you become.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
I actually just on that note, I own a coffee company, and I just had a guy text me the other day, and he was like, I've been struggling getting through all my editing, because he's an author. He's like, I've been struggling getting through my editing, but now that I found your coffee and I can actually drink it, because he's got like an acid problem, and ours is pretty low acidic. He's like, I can actually drink it. Now I can actually fucking focus and get the work done that I'm trying to do. And I'm just like, God damn it. Like,
That's awesome, man.
That's so cool, right? Like, on one hand, it's just coffee. Jeff, on one hand, it's just grooming supply. But like, at the end of the day, like, everything.
Someone's life.
You're helping people. You're changing people's lives, even if it's just a little way. You are, and it's so cool.
It's 100%, and it's one of those things where if they're taking the time out of the day to tell you that, like, it meant something. It meant, and like it's what might seem so small or insignificant for us, like, could be literally like change someone's semester or whatever it is. Like, it's amazing.
It really is.
Jordan, if you had to jump into a new profession other than what you do now, like, what would it be? Like, would you want to be a travel influencer? You sound like that's right up your alley.
An entrepreneur.
No, I'd be a history professor for sure.
Really?
Nice. Yeah,
hell yeah.
I've always said if I wasn't in the fitness industry, I'd be a history professor focusing on the Holocaust. I've like always been super interested in that. Like, I'm Jewish, spent a lot of time like volunteering with Holocaust survivors and like researching the Holocaust, and like actually I was very seriously considering going into like that field, but I just kept getting pulled back into fitness. But yeah, the Holocaust has always been something that's like been super interesting to me, the psychology behind it, just so much of what happened. And a lot of one of my favorite pieces of writing that I ever did to this day, I did a huge research paper and assignment on, basically I wanted to understand the psychology of the SS guards, like the troops, the people who actually like committed most of the murders. And it was so crazy and interesting, like, because basically I was reading a lot of the transcripts from the court cases and trials of the SS guards, and like reading a lot of their diaries and the diaries of like an SS guards, their wives or their families.
Now you're talking about the Nuremberg trials?
Yeah, the Nuremberg trials. Yep. Or like even just like the diaries of the troops, or like whatever,
Right.
like things that like, and it's so we hear about these acts of evil and just like think of how who could do such a thing, but it's regular people going home to their families, like going on vacation with their family. They would just do this stuff, then go grocery shopping with their wives. Like it was so interesting to me. And the quote that's always like that's stuck out to me is to the effect of, evil doesn't have a look. Like evil doesn't look a certain way. It's like so the long roundabout way of answering your question, I would probably be a history professor.
Have you read the book Man's Search for Meaning?
I have not heard of that book.
Yeah, that's by Viktor Frankl, and you'll like that one. But I was going to recommend a book. When you said you wrote a report on the mindset of the SS guards, and it brought to mind a book called Ordinary Men, because you use that phrase, they're ordinary people.
Yeah.
But there's a book called Ordinary Men, Reserve Police Battalion 101, and the Final Solution in Poland.
Oh, wow.
It's by a man named Christopher Browning.
Okay.
Now, what it talks about are these police officers who weren't indoctrinated by the socialist and fascist Nazi party, because they were already adults by the time this came around. And they were sent to basically police up the after effects of the invasion of Poland.
Okay.
And they were just ordinary men, but when they were tasked with something by a Nazi officer, they were given a choice. If you don't want to do this, you can just go home. But the problem is that they were such a tight-knit police unit, because they'd worked together for a decade or so.
Right.
The guy's like, one of the guys would say, well, if I go home, I'm leaving this burden on my friends.
Right.
And so it caused this progression and this escalation of events where, well, I'll stick around for this atrocity, and then I'll stick around for this atrocity. And so those ordinary men were corrupted because of their camaraderie and their unwillingness to abandon their brothers in arms that they had served with. And so these ordinary men became the very epitome of monsters. And that may be something you want to look into.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. I'm absolutely going to look into this as soon as we're off. 100%. Thank you for that.
Highly recommend Man's Search for Meaning as well. Viktor Frankl survived 4 different camps, I believe. He was an Austrian psychologist, and the book is kind of his walk through his experiences.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll check that out as well.
That one's real powerful. It's a pretty short read, but it's intense, and there are some really they're not platitudes. I can't think of the right word. Like just life-changing phrases like that stick out in there.
Yeah.
So, highly recommend that.
Also, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Oh yeah, I've read some from his work. Is crazy. He's outrageously smart.
Yeah, well, he wrote the entire thing. He wrote the entire thing with this white hot intensity, like, when someone's giving a passionate speech. But he was in the middle of a passionate speech for 10,000 pages or something. It was
It's nuts.
All right. Now bringing it back a little bit, if you had to, besides the anger thing that we talked about earlier that you learned from Gary, what were some of the most important lessons that you learned about yourself, about business over those 3.5 years that you worked with Gary, and you were on the road all the time, just going?
Yeah, I think before I started with Gary, I had my own business from like 2011 all the way until It was 2016 by the time I started with him. So I had been doing my own thing for a while. And I wore like how hard I worked, like a badge of honor on my sleeve. Like I was like, I always like, I had a lot of ego behind that. And it was interesting because when I started with Gary, I saw how hard he was working and his team was working. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm an idiot. And it was very, very, it's sort of like, I've wrestled since I was 8. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. When you're in a jiu-jitsu class or like you're in Muay Thai class, whatever it is, with people who are like really fucking good, like really like world class, they're all the nicest, most humble people in the world. They're like,
they don't give a fuck.
Just like they're relaxed. You would like, they seem so kind. They're never like bragging about anything. They're just relaxed, and they could kill you in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't ever talk about it. It's just like they're really kind and relaxed. And that's how Gary is about it. And that's basically, I've noticed the people who are not as good at wrestling or jiu-jitsu or fighting, they're the ones who are always like, they're like a yippy dog. They're like screaming a lot. They're like trying to make it seem like they could kill you, but they really couldn't. And so what I realized through like seeing Gary and seeing his team, how hard they worked, I was like, why the fuck am I wearing this like such a badge of honor, especially when I'm not even doing that much? And so I stopped talking about it so much, and then I started working way harder. I mean, when you look at Gary's schedule, it's crazy. It's I remember because they gave me access to his schedule, and it's nonstop, like from 5, 6 in the morning until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, every day, nonstop. Like not 5 minutes is free. It's like everything is blocked. And from there, like I remember one time, probably about 6 months after I started, we landed in an airport at like 2 in the morning. It was Gary, D-Rock, and I. And Gary like saddles up next to me, and he goes, how much harder do you work now versus when before you started working for me? And it was just like night and day. It's like, it's a lot of times
always another level.
It's a different world, man. It's like a different game. It's like completely and utterly different. And there were always times where we would say like, oh, I don't have the time to work. Like, you don't understand how busy I am, blah, blah, blah. But when you see how efficient he is at using his time every second of the day, you realize like there's just so much you're leaving on the table. And I really think probably the biggest benefit I've got from like that perspective is just realizing how much I was leaving on the table and how much harder I could actually work than I was. And that's just been probably just, it's allowed me to produce so much more content and to make so much more of an impact.
Definitely.
So on the flip side of that, you know, I know that you kind of wrapped up that full doing it 7 days a week with Gary a few months back, and you still work with him some. But what did you learn on the burnout side? Because I feel like you've talked a little bit about getting burned out, and that's why you needed to take a break. Because I remember when you posted that first video, like, oh, I'm no longer working with Gary. What have you learned about burnout and how to mitigate that, and what are you going to do different moving forward?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg. She said something to the effect of, out of sleep, fitness, business, family, and friends, you can only pick 3, like at any one point in time. And it's very much proven to be true. And I know like when I was working with Gary every single day, I basically, business was my number one. I dropped my own fitness off. And like, I definitely let my own fitness go completely because I was just so focused on other things. I let go of fitness. I let go of sleep. And then I focused more on business, family, and friends. But business was really number one. Since I've toned it down with Gary, I've got my own fitness and health really back in, which has been amazing. Just like feeling incredible, and got my sleep back in order, which is incredible. And I will say, for me, it's important to like have that list of 5 and know what I'm going to focus on, because I'm trying to structure my life in sort of the way I structure training programs and like periodize them. Like sometimes I'm going to focus on maximal strength. Other times I'm going to focus on building more muscle. Other times I'm going to focus on speed development. Other times I'm going to focus on more flexibility. And if you try and focus on everything at once, you're not going to get anywhere. So you have these like blocks of periodized, so like 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks to focus on one thing, get really good at it, and then you switch. And so like that's sort of what I'm doing right now, where if I'm going to go really hard for 4, 8, 12 weeks on business, boom, then I'm going to take a little bit of a backseat on that. I'm going to go more on my own health and fitness. And so allow myself to really focus on different things at different times, so that at the end of a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I've accomplished way more than if I was just constantly spinning my wheels trying to do all of them at the same time and not really get anywhere. So I think a lot of it is just being okay with having periods of time where I'm more focused or less focused on certain things, and sticking to it. So I think like, rather than being like, okay, it's sort of like when people go on a diet, like usually the sort of the cycle is a lot of guys, for example, a lot of guys who like when they want to get bigger, but they also want to get leaner. Like, okay, so I have a little bit of extra fat, so I'm going to go on a diet. So they start losing weight. Like, oh, great, it's working. But then a little bit later, like they start losing weight, but then like, oh man, I'm getting a little bit too small and weak. I don't feel good. So after like a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, like, so I'm going to eat more because now I want to get bigger. So they start eating more to get a little bit bigger. And then they're like, oh, great, cool, I'm getting bigger again. But like, oh, shoot, I'm adding more fat. I need to lose more weight. So then it goes back in that circle. And they never spend enough time focusing on one thing to actually make enough progress. I think a lot of people do that with their business too. So whatever I choose, just focusing on it for a minimum of 4, 8, or 12 weeks, depending on like what I want to accomplish, and then switching to the next phase.
That's a good point. I've been actually, so I played lacrosse in college, and that was something that my strength coach was super, super like on us about. Is like the summer, get as fucking big as you can. Like, pack on as much fucking weight, because in the fall we're turning all of it into muscle. Like we're getting leaner, we're getting like stronger, faster, more athletic, and as healthy as we possibly can. By the time the summer or the spring season rolls around, it's just survival. Right. It's like if you have a better strength base at the beginning, you're going to be higher at the end. Right.
That's literally 100% accurate.
And once I stopped playing lacrosse, I started doing jiu-jitsu almost 4 years ago now. And once I started training, it changed that for me. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And I've been like, I had to force myself to have like a season where it's like, these are the months that I'm going to focus on competition. Then I'm going to take some time off, fix whatever problems I got from all of that fucking fighting. Like, let's fix these little injuries, get like healed up, start packing on weight or losing weight if I want to go up or down divisions. And that's just been a recent development, but it's been good.
I love that, man. I think it's super important. Like, you can't really only focus on one thing forever. And I think when you do that, it's easy to sort of get blinded to like things you need to change, to like fall into like one simple habit that you only do one thing. It's like, if you look at the best people in any game, like if you want to look at social media, they're constantly changing the type of content they're putting out. They're not just doing one thing over and over again. And I think sometimes the best way to do that is to take a break from it, do something else, get better. It's sort of like one of the best things that makes me stand out, especially on Instagram, is my writing. Is like, I know for the better part of a year and a half, I really focused a lot on being a better writer, focusing on copywriting, reading Dan Kennedy, reading John Carlton, some of the best copywriters in the world, and then bringing that over to Instagram, where most people only focus on the image, where it's like, for me, I think the power lies in the caption. Like, that's where the magic is. And like, if you can get people to read an entire caption that maxes out all the characters, that's way more beneficial than someone just looking at a picture of you double tapping and not reading anything, getting any substance. So I think learning other skills that will take you away from something, that then when you come back to it, you're stronger and better and more creative, and you have more substance and value for them.
Do you know John Danaher?
Yeah, I actually train at the gym.
Do you? No shit.
I train at Hemzo.
Gordon and all of them?
Yeah, I train at Gordon, Ryan, with Nikki, with Mark Cerrone. Mark Cerrone is my coach. I was actually.
No shit.
Yeah, Mark.
Dude, that's awesome.
I
trained at a Danaher Black Belts gym out in Portland one time. I forget his name, but holy fuck, man, it's another level.
It's like, crazy, man.
It's crazy. It's so high quality jiu-jitsu. It's fucking nuts.
One of the coolest things about being in Danaher's class, number one, it's like there's like 17 black belts in there at any one time. Like Jake Shields is in there. It's like, it's crazy. GSP was in there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But one of the
GSP's in there a lot, isn't he?
He's in there a good amount. Yeah. it's one of the crazy things of watching Danaher coach in a huge class, of like 20, 30 people, all of whom are like very high level athletes. As soon as he starts talking, he doesn't raise his voice. He never says, "Hey, let's go. Like, let's get in the middle." He's like speaks very quietly.
That same voice he uses on like everything, that just like quiet, like, yeah.
Super quiet, like very quiet, almost like barely above a whisper. And everyone shuts up and comes over and listens intently. And like, he never raises his voice. It's like the only person who could probably hear it like and it fully is the person he's like using as the example to train with. And everybody else really has to pay attention. And I love that because it's like,
That's cool.
If you really want to learn, you're going to be like, you're not going to talk, you're going to be paying attention. And he doesn't go out of his way to say like, "Hey, I want you to pay attention." He's like, if you're here, if you want to pay attention, you will. And that's like, you're going to, I sort of think of it from the perspective of the harder you have to listen, the more you're going to take from it versus like, if they're shouting it, then you're not really going to pay attention as much.
It's like that seminar vibe, right? Like you go to a seminar and you might learn 3 or 4 techniques, but just because you went there and like made the effort, paid the money, went out of your way to some other gym to learn from someone you've never learned from before, those 3 or 4 techniques feel like magic, even though your professor might have taught you the same techniques 2 months ago, and you just in one ear and out the other. It's 100%. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Well, the
yeah,
more
awesome,
the more painful it is to learn something.
Dude, I will. So actually, my coffee company, or Ground Shark Coffee, or actually Jiu-Jitsu Coffee.
That's great.
Been doing it for just over a year now. My business partner, he's a brown belt. He's been training for almost 14 years, not counting injuries, and he's the coffee roaster, and then I just sell it. So next year, do you know Grappling Industries?
The Grappling
tournament
industry?
promotion. Yeah, no, Grappling Industries, the tournament promotion.
Oh no, I don't.
Okay, they've been around for a couple years, but they've got like 130 tournaments scheduled for next year. One of them's in Manhattan, and I've been working on with them. We just worked out a sponsorship deal. It's like a whole story, but I can set up a table to sell coffee at any tournament that they set up.
That's awesome.
So I'm probably coming out to New York next year.
That's awesome, man.
So,
yeah, come. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. That'd be cool.
Go rolling at Downhurst. That's amazing.
Yeah, hell yeah. Anyway, let's bring it back. I could talk jiu-jitsu all fucking day.
I love it. No, I love it. Jordan, when you wake up in the morning, what gets you out of bed?
As of right now, it's my girlfriend. Basically for me,
if she doesn't kick you out of bed mentally, what gets you up and moving?
It's really interesting. I have a very hard time going to sleep at night because, like, I'll tell you, for the last week, I've been spending like 3 hours a day on TikTok. Literally just like, it's no joke. Last night, my girlfriend was yelling at me, "Put your fucking phone down," because I'm researching it. I fucking love it. It's so interesting. And I posted the other day something that I put on TikTok on my Instagram, and it went crazy. People loved it. It's so interesting. But
it's crazy because I feel like Gary was talking about TikTok and like how big it was going to be probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just not like I've in the last 2 months maybe seen it go.
It's been crazy. I love it. It's really cool. And it's so funny because the best people on it are like 16 years old, 17 years old, like
Vine all over again.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly right. And
we're going to see another generation of YouTube vloggers posting stupid stuff on YouTube next.
I think for me, I love what I do. And my favorite part of my day is social media. Like, my favorite part of my day is posting, interacting with people, doing podcasts, stuff like this. Like, that's what I absolutely love to do more than anything in the world. So it's like the fact that I can get up and literally just open my phone and start interacting with people in Singapore or interacting with people all over the country. It's like, it's crazy when you think about it. It's absolutely bonkers that you can open up your Instagram account to a DM from someone thanking you, like, who like lives in Hong Kong and like their family's been like really like hard on them because of their weight or whatever it is. Like your post has really helped them get a better relationship with food. So it's crazy. It's unbelievable. And so I love doing that. It's like, that's what really motivates me and like gives me more energy.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to commend you on your content because I follow a bunch of fitness people, and your content is some of the most relatable, down to earth, engaging, funny stuff that's out there. Like it's really good, man. Like I was telling these guys the other day about your how to get a six-pack video that you shot the other day.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's funny.
That cracked me up, man. So funny. So funny.
Thank you.
Like
Yeah, I went and watched it right after you told me about it. I
it's
was like, okay, gotta look now.
it's just approachable, and it's taking fitness to a level where I feel like it's going like that's the general direction fitness is. I feel like a lot of fitness people are going, but most of them aren't there yet. They're
Right.
still hung up on the silly stuff, the silly details that don't actually matter. And you're actually giving people approachable and helpful advice that like they can, it's not going to last like the next 6 months. It's going to last them the next like 10 plus years because it's stuff that won't go out of style because it's practical.
Effective.
Right.
Thank you.
It's
I
not like
appreciate that.
a burner pill that they're going to go and get at GNC. Like it's,
Yeah. One thing that'll never go out of style is lifting heavy things. P90X is on the back burner.
That's exactly right. I mean, I wrote an article. I don't write bashing articles anymore. They don't really look good in general. I don't like it. But one of the biggest bashing articles I ever did was against P90X when I was like 2011, 2012. But yeah, thank you.
I think I might have read that. That might be why I'm bringing that up.
Just Inception, Jeff.
it's funny.
But spending literally after this, the rest of the day is going to be spent filming like TikTok and YouTube stuffs.
It's awesome. And I love Kenzie.
Oh, thank you.
You guys probably don't know this, but Kenzie is Jordan's alter ego with a long blonde hair and a
Nice.
Valley girl accent.
It's
I
been
like
so
that.
funny, like because I have Kenzie, I have Johnny Bag of Donuts, I have Dick Tiny, I have a bunch of characters. But it's been interesting in the political climate that we have right now because I'd say the vast majority of people love Kenzie and love the characters. But I've been getting a fair amount of women recently being like, "You're so misogynistic." I've been like, "Oh my god!" Like, I can't believe it's gotten to this right now that I can't even put a wig on and like pretend to be an Instagram influencer. But overall, the response has been amazing.
Well, if you want to take the attention off yourself, just tell them to go watch Dave Chappelle's new Netflix special.
Oh my god, I haven't seen it yet.
Dude.
I've seen a couple clips. I
Dude.
cannot wait.
I watched it last night.
I'm watching it as soon as we get out of here, all because I saw like Paste Magazine made some kind of big stink about it. I was like, well, that means I have to watch it now.
Right.
Yeah, I
It's
saw
one of the
Vice
best.
did the same thing. I was like, if Vice is saying don't watch it, I was like, I'm gonna watch it now.
Exactly.
He calls out all of the crazy bullshit that's been going on and just nails it all right on the head.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god.
I mean, some of the stuff, it's Chappelle. Like some of the stuff is like, ooh, it's funny, but it's kind of painful to laugh at this. But a lot of it was apparently filmed in Atlanta, and he says a few things, and like it's hilarious. But you can tell the crowd's like nervous laughing, like, oh, if my face is in this, he's me laughing at this joke. Somebody else
calls
somebody's gonna get me fired on Twitter for laughing at this insensitive joke.
He calls him
about
out on
time,
that
like,
shit too.
I'm so glad. I really think that the pendulum is finally swinging back now, though. Like, I really do. It got to a point where it was so extreme. I still think it's there, but it's starting to swing back where it's like,
Yeah, I think
enough of this fucking nonsense. Like, we need to relax a little bit.
For sure. I think this special getting so much clout out there and so much buzz around it, I think it's one of those things that is like the catalyst to help the pendulum come back.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole psychology behind the fear of the overcorrection.
Yeah.
Where we're way over here where nothing is okay. And then we want it to rest dead center, but it's been pulled back so far. It's going to take 15 Chappelle specials to get it to settle in the center, because I think one of the things that I see, and I've watched a few of your videos, and with comedians in general, they hit on all points, not just one side. There's no bias. Nothing's off limits because everything can be funny. Right. And when I hear you say, you're getting called out for being misogynistic. Look, man, I've been a Red Men Group speaker. I run a pro male, pro positive masculinity company.
I love that.
And that is 99.999% of the content I put out is about men being men, women acting like women, and raising your sons as boys and your girls as women. So I get that a lot, but just keep going, man, because the pendulum's swinging back, and there might be some kind of overcorrection where thing gets way out of hand, but then eventually it'll settle back.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that, man. I'm gonna have to follow your stuff. I love that.
Well, I'm not gonna, blow smoke up your skirt here, but I recently, like within the last 20 minutes, started following you on Twitter.
I was gonna wait till after we're done here, but
I was wondering if he was gonna get the notification while he was sitting there. I was like, oh yeah. Well, when I first found out we were gonna have you on the show, I was like, cool, I need to follow this guy, and I looked you up, but I just never clicked follow.
Yeah, it's all good, man. No worries.
Jordan, what do you wish you had known when you got started in the fitness industry that you know now?
That's a great question. I wish that I knew. Oh man, there's a lot. I think I actually wrote a post on this recently, but I would say I wish that I knew it was because I got started when I was really young. I think one of the most important things I've learned is that people really respect you when you say you don't know the answer to something rather than trying to make it up. And when I was younger, when I didn't know the answer, I would almost like feel like not bad. You feel bad about it, but I'd feel like less smart. I'd feel like I had to make something up in order to sound smart. Or even if I was in a debate with somebody and they were telling me something and it made sense, I would dig my heels in deeper and defend something that I knew wasn't right just because I didn't want to be wrong. And I wish I knew then what I know now, that like being able to say, wow, like I never thought of it that way. That makes a lot of sense. Will allow people to trust you more, and it will build far more respect and loyalty than trying to dig your heels in further and defend something that you know isn't right. So that's definitely what I would say for sure.
Awesome. That's really
Ed
good.
Lattimore actually just put out a tweet about that the other day. He was like, one of my favorite things to do in an argument is to just tell the other person, oh shit, I guess you're right, and watch their head explode. No one does that.
It's one of the best debate tactics. Like,
I do that when my wife's mad at me. I just, babe, you got a good point. And she does not know what to say.
It's so true.
That's awesome. Nick, you want to go with your question since we're wrapping up here?
Yep. So I always like to ask this right before we finish up. If there was and actually I think I know what it's going to be, but if there's one thing that you would like to leave people with, like one kind of mindset shift or one like philosophical thing that you've learned over the course of your career, what would that be? Like if you bring it down to one or two sentences.
Oh man. Basically I would say, regardless of whatever it is, whether it's fitness or health or business or whatever it is, I very, very, very much believe that doing something is always better than nothing, always. And like, stop looking for the perfect scenario. Stop looking for like the perfect program or the perfect post or the perfect caption or the perfect exercise or the perfect whatever. Like, doing something will always, always, always be better than nothing. And I think, sort of going off that, a lot of times people are looking for motivation to do something. And I think looking for motivation is a very flawed way of going about it. I think that the only way you get more motivated is to first do something that you don't want to do. I think the action is really the first step. And you have to grit your teeth. You got to do something you don't want to do. And then from that action, you'll see results. And then from those results, you'll get more motivated. And then from getting motivated, you'll take more action. And that's how the cycle continues. And I think like a lot of people are just looking for that motivation, when in reality, the motivation is going to come from gritting the fuck up and doing something you actually don't want to do in the first place, because that's the right thing to do. And then from there, the motivation will come. So stop looking for the perfect thing or whatever. Just do it. And then from there, you'll build habits and get more motivation from that.
Hell yeah. I like that a lot.
Hashtag don't be a bitch.
Just do it, man. Just do it.
Great. Jordan, where can people find you online?
YouTube, Jordan Syatt. Instagram, Syatt Fitness. You just Google search Jordan Syatt, Syatt. It'll come right up with a lot of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on and enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Become unemployable.